This video is about a small experiment that turned into a year-long experiment wherein I replaced social media with microjournaling for an entire year. And I'll satisfy some of your curiosity right now by saying, yeah, a lot of the conclusions were pretty much what you'd expect. I felt better, I got to know myself more, I learned how to check in with my feelings. But by the end of the experiment, there were 6 more findings that I just couldn't have seen coming. In this video, I'm going to walk you through why I did the experiment, how I did the experiment, and what I learned. And a quick thanks to today's sponsor, Storyblocks. They're not only supporting my channel, which is awesome, but they're also providing pretty cool visuals. More on them later. For now, let's talk about this experiment. Phase 1, identify the problem. So this happened in my life pretty damn organically, but basically I got addicted to social media. Tech companies be like, no, don't, think of your mental health. Money. But yeah, basically about a year ago I found that I was pretty addicted to TikTok, Instagram and YouTube. So for me the problem was twofold. There was the addictive nature of the content I was consuming, but there was also the fact that I was actively trying to build a platform on these channels. Naturally, like any creator, I got way too into the metrics and then I let the metrics dictate my mood. If a post went well, it was a good day. If it went bad, it was a bad day. Oh. Basically, it was a textbook unhealthy relationship with social media. And so, a year ago, I decided to change it. I knew intuitively just how much social media was eroding me, but it wasn't until I did this very specific journaling exercise that it really just punched me in the face, man. Just punch me. That exercise, if you're curious, I've talked about this a lot on the channel, but for 30 days, just ask yourself what drained you of energy and then look for the patterns in those answers across a month. For me, the most common answer to what drained me of energy was social media. Conversely though, I noticed that every time I journaled, I felt amazing. You're starting to see how I arrived on the experiment? So to catch you up to speed, social media bad, journaling good. And then I remembered this tip that I picked up from this sober YouTuber called Stop Drinking Expert. He said that the reason that most people fail to quit alcohol is because they just try to subtract it from their life. And then all of a sudden they're in the situations that they would normally be in where they would drink alcohol, but without alcohol. And so now they're miserable. They're at the pub and they're watching everybody else get drunk and they're like, oh, my life sucks. His tip was to not fill that hole with the same activities that you would do but sober, but to fill them with entirely new activities altogether. Novelty, basically. Dance classes, rock climbing, tennis, learning a new language, horse club. He went on to say that a lot of alcoholics tend to drink more in the evening, so just looking for evening activities might be enough to start becoming sober. His advice had worked for me for when I wanted to quit drugs and alcohol, so I figured, why not try this logic on social media? The only problem was, for me, social media wasn't really time dependent. There wasn't a moment of the day where I would check social media more than other moments of the day. It was more just every time I unlocked my phone. So I figured, well, why don't I just replace it with a different app? But what app? And then I saw it in all its orange glory. The Notes app. Phase 2. Establish the rules. I opened up my Notes app, and before this, my Notes app was basically shopping list, to-do list, and those weird ideas that you get at 3 a.m. and then you can never really understand again. Everybody wears a frog hat party. And I start a new note and I give it the title of the day. Tuesday the 19th of January. Then I wrote, 9:04 a.m. I really want to check social media, but I'm not going to. Instead, I'm going to check in with how I feel. Instead of trying to abstain from phone use altogether, I took what was already a compulsive action, which was unlocking my phone, and I used it to trigger a new healthy habit, writing in the Notes app. Now heads up, I didn't stop my paper journaling practice either. I still did long form journaling, but I just started to use my phone for what I would come to call microjournaling. Tiny little entries every time I unlocked my phone, wherein I would write how I was feeling or what was going through my head. They could be as long or as short as I wanted. So on this Tuesday, the 19th of January, I start writing and I keep writing, and it probably lasted a whole 10 minutes of just writing in my Notes app. And I was like, man, this feels pretty good. I think, I've probably earned some social media now. So then I close the Notes app and I open back up Instagram. Uh-oh, we know how this goes. 5 minutes into hating myself, I figured if this experiment was going to be real, I would have to add one more element. So this comes from a guy called Tom Bilyeu, who is a kind of a self-improvement dude. He says that he finds it really easy to eat 0 Doritos and really hard to eat 1. And what he's referring to is that if he brings chips into his house, he's going to find it really, really hard to abstain from them. But if the chips never even come into his house, he'll just naturally be healthy because he won't have to use his willpower. Controlling your environment is a way to outsource your discipline. And I figured my phone was no different. So here are the rules I set. No social media apps on your phone unless you're using them to post. When you do, you're allowed 15 minutes on the app. This is mostly because I found that 100% abstinence is usually not effective for me. Whenever you go to look at social media, you must open the Notes app and journal. You can journal for as long or as short as you like. Then in one final act of rebellion, I put the Notes app where the social media app was, thus using my thumb's muscle memory to my advantage. So now that everything was set up, it was time for phase 3. Do it for a year. All right, day 1 of 365 down. Didn't look at social media today. That was kind of cool, just journaled instead. Guess I'm gonna do this for a year. Because I didn't replace social media with, say, surfing, there isn't really any exciting B-roll here. But if you are looking for exciting B-roll, then you should check out Storyblocks. Yeah? How's that for a little slide into the sponsor? About as smooth as gravel, baby. But yes, Storyblocks. So I turned down about 95% of the sponsors that approach this channel because I only really ever wanted to talk about things that I think are A, relevant to you, and B, that I use. Storyblocks ticks both those boxes, and here's what's cool about it. So at its core, Storyblocks lets you tell better stories through video. It does this through all its assets that it provides for video creators. 4K footage, After Effects and Premiere Pro templates, music, images, sound effects, whatever you need to bring your films to the next level, Storyblocks has got you. They have diverse and inclusive content, which is super cool, unlimited downloads, subscriptions for every budget, and enterprise licensing if you're part of a larger team. But most importantly, what I like is it's easy to use, they're cool, they support the channel, which is great, and makes these videos sing, baby. La. Not me, I don't do singing. But yeah, if you're curious, if you're a creator, if you're in any way involved in film or video, do check out Storyblocks. I will leave a link in the description. All right, so back to the experiment. I'm doing this every day for a year, right? And here's what I can say about it. I did microjournal every single day. I really didn't expect it. That wasn't my plan. My plan was anything above 70% of your days is fine. But yeah, I actually ended up hitting every day, which was amazing. The start was rocky. For those first couple of weeks, I would only write like a sentence or two. But then after that, yeah, I'd write paragraphs every day. I did slip up a lot throughout the year. I would have social media apps on my phone a lot longer than the 15-minute mark that I'd said. But, you know, I figured done was better than perfect. This is something that I learned from quitting drugs. One bad day doesn't mean you've lost all your progress. It just means one bad day. And then finally, when I did have social media apps on my phone, my willpower just sucked. It just wasn't good enough. Ever. This is because the social apps have the brightest engineers and designers working tirelessly to keep you addicted. It's unethical, and weirdly, it's just accepted by everybody that we can neurologically cook people's brains in the name of selling ad space. But the point is, 12 months go by, I actually do the experiment, it's a full year, and here are my findings. Finding number 1, the cliched stuff all happened. Like I said at the start, yes, I felt better. Yes, I got to know myself more. Yes, I naturally started checking in with how I feel a lot more often. I became more grateful, more optimistic, less reactionary, had a healthier relationship with my phone. The experiment pretty much hit bang on my expectations, and probably yours when you clicked on this video. I know this might sound wild, but journaling is infinitely healthier than going on an app where everybody's yelling at each other and making each other guilty, angry, and jealous all the time. Who could have seen that coming? All right, now that the cliches are done, here are 6 more findings that I just couldn't have predicted. Finding 2, my to-do lists and organizational methods got real good. As I was journaling, I would notice that the things that I just had to do that day would just naturally pop up. Urgent priorities, deadlines, that sort of thing. So instead of writing them in the micro-journaling, I would just put them at the top of the Notes app. This quickly turned into a daily to-do list, which then ended up turning into a whole to-do list system. And I'll make a full video on this later because I've thought a lot about it. Probably too much. But yeah, here's the overview. I ended up living by 5 lists. 2 daily to-do lists, all the stuff that I wanted to get done in a day if I was my ideal self, if I was just killing it. I literally called it the if I'm killing it list. And then the bare minimum list, just the bare minimum of things that I would need to do that day in order to not create future stress. If you're curious, I would write the bare minimum list first and then write if I'm killing it and then put a bunch more items. The 3rd list was my weekly to-do list. Pretty self-explanatory. The 4th list was a specific one for ongoing life admin. It's like stuff I need to get from the shops or things to do around the house. And then the 5th list is what I call the blue sky list. It's all the big picture, large plan stuff. So it's got my bucket list, things that I want to do, you know, like travel Central Asia or make a board game or make a big animated series. It's got the big life things that I want to do and exactly why I want to do them. And I'll usually check in with this maybe once a month, twice a month, just make sure I'm on the right track. I will also note that as a side effect of getting so organized, 2021 was the most productive year of my life. I wrote and illustrated my first book, and the animation studio I co-run, it became profitable, and we made 3 animated pilots. But overall, it wasn't all roses. Finding 3. My Instagram and TikTok growth slowed right down. This is arguably one of the 2 negative outcomes of this experiment. Arguably, my Instagram and TikTok growth was nothing to write home about, but weirdly, my YouTube growth doubled. Now, why did this happen? I think I put it down to 3 reasons. The first reason is the obvious one. I was using social apps less, so I ended up posting on them less, and posting is the fastest avenue to growth, but I'd taken that piece out. Second reason is because I was reflecting more, I realized that I just didn't really care about attention-seeking short-form social content. I just didn't. And the third reason is that I did start caring a lot more about personal growth. And that realization ended up fueling a lot of the content here on YouTube. So I think I became more in touch with my values, and that ended up getting reflected in my work, which is a pretty common process. Finding 4, my memory improved. This one's probably my favorite finding, but because I have a whole year's worth of journaling entries in my phone, I can scroll to any day I want and I'll figure out exactly what I did that day. But what's really cool is as I start reading these journaling entries for August the 5th or June the 28th, I actually start to remember them. Previously, I thought that this recollection wasn't available to me and I just thought I had a bad memory. Turns out all the memories are actually in there. They just need a little prompt to come out. So yeah, cool bonus, memory. Finding 5, I consumed better content. Previously, when I unlocked my phone, my options for consuming were social apps. But in this experiment, once I deleted all the social apps, now my options were the Notes app or, damn, what else is on my phone? Audible. I haven't used that in a minute. I ended up listening to way more audiobooks. That was cool. Finding 6. When I stopped the experiment, the habit came back. This is the second negative finding. I thought that maybe that, 66 days to form a habit thing would help me and I'd be like, no, I hate social media forever. But turns out, nah. Having Silicon Valley's best and brightest try get me as addicted as possible to these apps has a pretty lasting effect. So yeah, when I stopped the experiment, found myself winding back up into social media addiction. Now, if you are going to do this experiment yourself, this might just be me. I am more on the addiction-prone end of the spectrum. Just ask my former dealers. But yeah, after realizing that the old habit was just lying dormant and waiting for me, I had to restart the experiment. So I'm going again, but hopefully for life now. And finally, finding 7. Most problems won't matter in 10 days. This is by far the coolest side effect of this experiment, learning this. And if you have an old to-do list handy, you can test this on yourself right now. The older the better. When I look at my old micro-journaling entries from say 4 months ago or something, and the to-do list that accompany them, I remember just how much I was stressing over that set of things and how much I needed to get it done, and how little it means right now. For example, there's this entry in April of last year where I'm stressing so much about this illustration that I have to get done, and I haven't thought about that illustration since May. Literally. At all. But I'm writing as if I think it will never end, and I'm writing as if it's this marathon, it's consuming my entire life. And I arrive at a conclusion that I imagine a lot of you have arrived at. You know that the former stress was real, but it probably wasn't necessary. The more I realized this, the more I kept asking myself that classic question. Will this matter in 10 days' time? Most of the time I'd think, no, but I have my doubts. But now, because I had the data on what I was stressed about every single day, I literally have the evidence to answer that question. And yeah, for like 90% of stuff, doesn't matter in 10 days' time. Who knew? Would I recommend this experiment to somebody else? Yes. Would I do it again? Yes, and in fact I am. I want to do this forever. What advice would you give to somebody wanting to start the experiment? Try it for a week. Anything above a 70% is a win. What was the most important part of this experiment? The concept of micro-journaling. I think that journaling itself sometimes intimidates people because you're like, oh God, I got to fill a whole page. How do I even start that? Where do I start? Do I Dear Diary and then just like spill my guts? What do I do? But I think micro-journaling as a concept, just a sentence here and there throughout the day, I think it massively lowers the barrier to entry. So if you're curious, I would recommend it. Anyway, if any of this intrigues you, just try it for like a small amount of time. Just delete those apps, put the Notes app where they used to be, and then, yeah, man, that's it. That's it. Good luck. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you try it in the comments, I'd love to know your findings as well. Incidentally, that book that I mentioned before, it's called Your Head is a Houseboat. Osher Günsberg called it the most important and accessible mental health book in a generation. Truly life-changing, which is a lot to live up to. Thanks, Osher. All right. Have a beautiful day. Catch ya.